Welcome to Charity Therapy, a podcast from Birkin Law about building better nonprofits. I'm your host, Jess Birkin. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Charity Therapy. Today, I am joined by my friend, Dara Rudick, who's a CEO of Management HQ. Dara runs an organization that's dedicated to membership-based organizations. In the trades, we call it an AMC, right? An association management company. So I have worked with Dara. She's been a colleague for years now. We office at the same co-working space for a long time. I think that's how we met. So I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for being here, Dara.
Thanks for having me, Jess. I am excited also.
It's going to be fun. We have some really good questions today. And I wanted to have you on the podcast specifically because voting member organizations like the associations you work with have their own unique set of problems in my experience. And I have lots of clients who are starting nonprofits who think they should have voting members. And I'm always kind of like, wait, do you really know what that means? So Dara, can you kind of just give us a quick answer of what makes a voting member association or organization different from the garden variety nonprofit?
Sure. And you're right. They are different. You, I would imagine, see a lot of the problems and issues, right?
I do.
Because usually things don't reach the level of going to the attorney unless there's some issues that are getting real serious. But we see a lot of really cool opportunities. And we specifically work with those membership associations. So things like churches that also have members, I'm not going to speak to those. I'm going to just speak to membership associations. But the coolest thing about these associations, and my whole career has been built on association work. I love that that there are these communities of professionals that are coming together that are willing to give their time and talent to better their industry. That is such a powerful impact that these folks are having, right? So for me, I see a lot of positives in having a membership-based organization. That being said, it's a different dynamic. And when you're building a board of directors or, that key leadership body that needs to be voted on by the members, if you're a membership-based organization, again, a lot of good opportunities there. But if you don't have your foundational pieces really, really strong, there's a lot of risk there for things to go awry.
Girl, preach. Oh my God. That is so true. I love it. Yes. Because for me, the main difference is that in a voting member association, they have legal rights. They have legal standing. And it's not a zoo membership where you get a card and you come to the zoo as many times as you want. It's like you have some legal standing at this organization, which makes a whole lot of sense in trade associations and sometimes doesn't make a lot of sense, but gets used anyway.
Yeah.
So let's dig right in and get to our first question. Are you ready to rock?
Let's do it.
All right. Our nonprofit association bylaws say, at the end of the voting process, the results will be reported to the president and secretary, who promptly shall report the results to the members. Unquote. Our board has never reported anything other than the winners of the election on the ground that they didn't want to embarrass the losing candidates. We believe that the candidates' feelings are irrelevant and that the board is depriving all members of basic election information such as total votes cast, vote counts by candidate, ballots discarded, etc. What can we do to make the board follow the bylaws? Oh, Lord, this is members in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, it is. And it's really representative of the dynamics of a volunteer board of directors. It's a cool question. To start with, the statement that at the conclusion of the voting process, the results will be reported to the president and secretary, who promptly shall report the results to the members. How open is that to interpretation, right?
Oh my gosh, right? This is like terrible drafting.
Yeah, right. And that's where, that's when I get a call or you get a call from a board.
Yeah. 100% this organization uses Robert's rules based on just the way this one sentence is written. It's like overly bureaucratic without actually communicating anything.
Well, that's right. So that can be viewed as a problem, right? But I would argue that in bylaws and policies, there's a lot of room for interpretation.
Yes.
Number one, how is the board building itself as a body that can work collaboratively? That's a big piece. That's a hard piece, easier said than done. But really getting back to the organization's mission, vision, values. I'm assuming the organization has those defined. If not, that is the first order of business. But really determining the right path that aligns with those, right? Because, for example, if the organization values collaboration, inclusiveness, compassion, that might be something where you want to take a step to protect relationships and maybe hold on to those folks that didn't win the election by not necessarily publicly humiliating them.
Right.
And then have an opportunity to re-engage them. Again, build that future generation of board leaders, which is a hot topic these days and a big challenge of organizations. On the other hand, if the organization values, say, honesty at any cost, right? Then, yeah, I mean, let's put everything out there. And if that's the culture and value that you want to build in the organization, maybe you do take a stronger hand at being very, very open about the nitty gritty of the election.
Yeah. And what's coming through, if I'm kind of trying to read between the lines here for me, there are a couple of things that pop. Is this an organization where there is some tension between the member body and the board governance that has been brewing? Because anytime the members are saying, we need to make the board follow the bylaws, that's kind of a red flag for me that things are not going so great on a relationship basis. And then the other thing that's popping for me is like this desire that can come up in a lot of membership orgs to treat themselves like government or like government light. And there gets to be this, this request is basically like, we need to know how many votes were cast, how many votes per candidate, almost like the board is the Secretary of State's office at the state doing, we demand a recount, like all of that sort of very governmental reporting out, which is traditionally not a thing in the nonprofit sector. And so that kind of Robert's rulesy parliamentarian, like we need to run everything like we're the government. But I would be wondering, embedded in this question, is there a lack of trust right now between the members and the board? And like, I would probably be asking more, if this were a client, I would be like, what else? Tell me about what else is going on at the organization right now.
That is such good insight, Jess. And I think you're absolutely right. Really just, again, getting back to those, like, does the organization have a solid foundation in that really key relationship? What can the board do? And it's interesting, your interpretation of this is the questions coming from a member. I thought it was coming from another board member because I've seen those, I call them intra communications between boards, right? Where some feel like this, some feel like that. But in any case, it's a communications and collaboration issue. And how do they address that? I love that insight.
Yes. All right. Here's question 2. Can we prevent a member from renewing their membership? This member has been a thorn in our side for years. He fights us on everything, and recently he's gone so far as to send rambling letters to individual board members and even showed up at our treasurer's house. His demands make no sense, and we have no idea how to make him happy. How can we kick him out? There's a lot there.
Yeah. I think the showing up at the treasurer's house is a piece that there's some deep concern there that goes outside of the realm of normal.
Yeah. And there could be like a harassment restraining order issue here, but like, let's not go there. Let's just deal with the membership issue.
That's more my area of expertise.
Mine too.
So thank you. But I think that kicking a member out or preventing someone from being a member, that's drastic. That can have an impact on the trust of other members, culture of the organization. So you want to be careful about it. You don't want to, if it has to happen, it has to happen. But really those foundational pieces of having policies in place. What is our process if we do need to exit a
Yeah.
member? How are we fair about it? Those pieces can really help in these situations.
Yeah, I would absolutely view terminating a member's membership as like the last stop on the train. And I love what you're saying about policies. Like, usually if something like this comes up, I'm going, okay, do we actually have a policy about behavior? Do we have a code of conduct? If we don't, now is a good time to institute one. And, what else have we done? It looks like there's a lot of history here and they're kind of at the end of their rope. And this person does sound a little off the rails. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that like this person does probably need to go. But it's like, have we documented what's going on? Have we looked at our bylaws to see what our membership termination provisions are? I'm assuming in this case, it's a voting member organization. And in my state where we are, there's rules about this in the statute. You have to use a process that's fair and reasonable. If you're in a different state, there may be similar statutes on point, but you also need to look at your bylaws. And I don't know that you can prevent people from renewing necessarily, but you definitely can terminate a voting member's membership. But it is like, that's the last ditch thing, because that's just going to affect your whole community. And it just starts to get very aggressive and like icky.
Yeah. And sometimes it has to happen, though. I mean, I think if it has to happen, you want to follow a fair process like you would with any human resources issue. You want to be really clear with this person about what they're doing wrong, what they need to do to fix it, and what the consequence is going to be if they don't fix it. You need to be really clear that consequence could be they lose their membership, right?
Yeah.
But there's those words, how to make him happy, that is a priority, it feels like, in this question, that whoever's asking it is trying to make this person happy. And that's a tough lesson for volunteer leaders who are sitting on the boards of peer-run organizations where you just want to have fun with your peers, right? And collaborate and do great things for your industry. But those great things for your industry could look like getting rid of some folks that have been really detrimental, and just understanding that reality when you agree to serve on a board, right?
And I feel like a lot of nonprofits are going through this right now where, things are changing and maybe focuses are changing, or we're trying to say, hey, like maybe we want to work on dismantling, dominant culture. And there are people who are just like, I don't know why you care about that. And now I don't feel like I belong here anymore. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's a lot of things going on where, maybe we aren't making everybody happy anymore. Maybe there is, a shift. And I'm a big fan of asking people to resign before terminating them. Mm-hmm. Like having a candid conversation and just saying like, it seems like this is not working and like you're not happy here. And we would recommend that you resign and not renew. And that's a way better conversation and a better stop on the train than to just take the train all the way to the end and be like, you're done. Because a lot of times you can get people to resign and sort of avoid all of the PR fallout, communications drama that comes from like removing somebody or terminating their membership. So I would just see what else they can do first before going to the like nuclear option.
I love that. I love that. And I also love I feel like we could do a whole like series of podcasts on what it looks like to let go of certain things within your organization, whether it's an association or a small business or whatever, and the incredibly beautiful things that can happen when you make the space for them to happen, for what's next to happen. So I love where you were going with that too, Jess.
Yeah.
I just love that.
Change is hard, it just is.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on to question number 3. I am the president of a professional association and things are a mess right now. Our operations have been basically on hold since the beginning of the pandemic, and a vocal minority of our members have disagreed with how things have been handled. Well, it turns out that this group held a meeting with most of our members while my 2 other board members and I were out of town, and they, quote, voted in a new board. What? Can they do that? They've now been doing work and collecting donations into a different bank account opened with our EIN, and a ton of members have been fighting in our online forum about who is the rightful board. What now? Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That's another good one.
What now is you call me, and we will try and figure it out.
And I think that's right. I mean, I first of all, like, we've served on boards, right? We get this. I don't think many folks that have served on boards wouldn't understand this type of situation where it just feels
like the nightmare scenario, frankly. I mean, this is so out there.
It is, but I always like to tell folks, because the board leaders who I, work with, a lot of times they will look to us for guidance before things get to this point, hopefully.
Yeah.
Occasionally we'll bring on an association that things are at this point. But I always think, and I don't mean this in a condescending way, it might sound condescending, but first, just taking a step back as leadership and really taking a moment to just really breathe. And this isn't the end of the world, right? This is a mess, but there are folks like you out there that can help with these messes. But I really do love that the board president cares enough to address the issue. I've seen in a lot of cases board presidents who resign when things get to this point. And I just feel like I don't really blame them, but I have a lot of respect for folks that stick around to be part of the solution. So I think that's cool.
Yeah. The reason this is the nightmare scenario in my mind is because it's so far out of control.
Mm-hmm.
It's we haven't asked for help yet. And now there's been a secret meeting, and there's a new board that's a second board, and there's a fake board and a real board, and there's double bank accounts, and the time and effort and money required to unravel all of this. It's so much work. And it detracts from both sides, if you will, from actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is achieving their mission. And a lot of times in the cases I've worked on where something like this goes on, there's been some sort of philosophical schism, and one group thinks we should be doing this and one group thinks we should be doing that. And sometimes there's an easier solution, hey, you are really all about this program, and so why don't you just start a different organization over here, rather than having clandestine secret member meetings and everybody arguing about whether that was procedurally correct. And now you have multiple bank accounts under the same tax ID number and trying to unwind that with the banks, which banks are so dumb when it comes to nonprofits. It's incredibly difficult. Just looking for a solution earlier in the process and not ramping up, and everybody's ramping up and bracing for conflict and getting into these big, I tend to call these Survivor Island disputes where they're forming strategic alliances and blindsiding other people and all of that stuff. It's just a frustrating situation because there's so much time and effort that's wasted on drama, basically.
Well, and it's going to take a really strong board leader, right? And, you would hope a strong executive committee, if this board has one, to know that they need to get resources, right? They need to call you, they need to call me, they need some professional help. And there's going to be some tough decisions, but decisions that need to be made. A lot of times you see this kind of thing happen where there is a vacuum of leadership, and folks just aren't making decisions or aren't responding to smaller issues, and then they turn into bigger issues. And you're right, it's going to take a lot to untangle this. It's not impossible. And occasionally you'll see these associations that do just get the right leadership team at the right time in there, and they can turn it around.
Yeah, I'm such a preventative maintenance person. This would be ooh, this is a really lucrative, messy thing for a lawyer to wade into. And these situations always just make me sad.
Yeah.
I'm always ask for help, earlier in the process.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads me to think about, what are really the lessons or the takeaways from these questions. And I think I mean, it sounds like common sense, but really get help early. Ask for support early and avoid the big, hairy problems, right? Because you can turn it around. If you get the right support at the right time, you can absolutely turn it around, just like you were saying. And then I think another one for me from these is when there are problems in a voting member organization, especially, sometimes because their structure is a little bureaucratic at times, people tend to look to the legal technical solution first before looking at the people solution. And so often the harder, emotional, like let's all be grown-ups, people type solutions are really the better way to solve the problem. And it's not just a, you have to follow the bylaws or we got you on this technicality. So try to focus on human solutions before legal technical solutions is one for me. And then again, this sounds dumb, but seriously, when stuff is starting to go sideways, look at your policies and procedures. These are the places that you're supposed to be able to lean on for support when the shit hits the fan. And if you don't have a policy that's on point, that should be a signal that you need to start working on that, because if it comes up once, it can come up again. That, and I just think you can't make everybody happy, and change is difficult. Whenever you are changing anything, somebody's not necessarily going to be thrilled with it, and that's okay. It just makes it harder to manage.
I agree with everything you said 100%. And I'm going to kind of piggyback on the one that policies and procedures. I know nobody wants to talk about policies and procedures.
I know, it's so boring.
I feel like, yep, we sit at board tables all the time and we're like, we got to have policies and procedures or we're going to keep having this conversation. But it's the foundation, right? I mean, if you want to have a healthy body, you eat right, you exercise, and you get enough sleep. If you want to have a healthy organization, you have solid frameworks in place. You have a leadership body that is equipped to lead. And you have a culture built on defined mission, vision, and values that's really, really healthy and able to withstand some conflict and some issues because they're going to arise. So I would say just getting back to the basics and making sure you've got those in a good place.
Policies and procedures are take your vitamins. I'm picturing Hulk Hogan ripping off his t-shirt and saying, eat your vitamins and listen to your parents. That's it in a nutshell. Dara, thank you so much for joining me. If folks want to connect with you and learn more about what you do, where can they find you online?
Our website is management-hq.com, and I personally am on LinkedIn, so is our company.
All right, right on. Folks, if you enjoyed this episode, please do it right now. Go to your podcast app, go to iTunes, and give me a rating. It actually does help me out. Share this with a friend. If you have a question or a story to share, I would love to hear from you. Send me a note online or leave a voice memo by calling 612-208-9120. Thanks for listening. All right, folks, that's our show. Be sure to follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Jess Birkin. We want to hear from you. Send us a message at our website, charitytherapy.show. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at birkinlaw.com/signup. Charity Therapy is a production of Birkin Law Office, PLLC. Our theme song is by Whalehawk. And remember, folks, this podcast is produced for your entertainment and is not a substitute for actual legal advice.